Hello, everybody. Welcome to tonight's live poetry reading. Tonight we're featuring Aline Soules, Thomas Odendahl, Jennifer Kelley, and Christine Ellsworth. As usual, I will start off with a couple of my poems. This first poem, I thought it was appropriate for this time of year. It's a poem that's in dog, which once again, it's available at Amazon.com, real cheap. You can probably also order a book from me if you know my email address. It costs more that way. It's called The Retired Rep on a Walk. It is morning. I walk along an old football field and spot just beyond the end zone a number of geese stand as if choosing sides for a game. No clue where there was a football. Cars on the street pass me, the exhaust as harsh as angry fans. I cannot throw a flag. I think of players who have ignored warnings. Looking back at the field, maybe the geese are getting ready to honk in formation and march a halftime show. I don't know. I am just glad to see that the animal kingdom can find a use for what is left behind. This next poem is called The Failure Tree. In my yard rests a tree which all my failures perch upon, at night taking turns to enter my dreams. My successes become kites free from their strings, taken in the wind. I hope there is someone to see their tails. The first poet is Aline Soules. Aline's work has appeared in such publications as the Kennan Review, Houston Literary Review, Poetry Midwest, and the Galway Review. Her book reviews have been accepted by Capella Quarterly, Heavy Feather Review, and others. She earned an MFA from Antioch University, Los Angeles, in both poetry and fiction, and teaches creative writing for the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute. Welcome, Aline.
Thank you so very much, Ron. I decided today to read some poems that I've been working on over the years that in one way pair up or triple up with some other poem so that they inform each other. So I'm going to start with two poems that appeared at different times in the Galway Review, and they relate very much to my childhood. The first one is called Gutting. Gates creak open at 4:30. Factory horn as fogged as my half-closed eyes. We swarm into the shed amid dark swirling mists. Echoes of yesterday's fish assail our nostrils as we wait for boats to loom into yellow light, boats loaded below the Plimsoll line with haddock, cod, hake, mackerel, whatever nets catch from the fish-laden sea of the 1950s. I pull on black rubber waders and hairnet, grab my knife and take my station, hands red from cold. 9 years old, I stand on an upturned crate, too short to reach the slatted wooden boards. Still dry, the boards stretch across the concrete floor. Beyond, the conveyor belt stands silent, waits for the first boat to blow. Morag next to me chatters till the first blast. She's been gutting since she left school at 15, wants better for her daughter, worries about me being here. Her arms are like ham hocks, her feet splayed and swollen. Drew, with sinewed arms and body like the stern of a boat, roars, "Whisht, woman, dinna fash yoursel, you'll change nothing." The first boat drowns our voices. I grab the wooden slats hard, while the sea doors swing wide and the boat lowers its stern. Fish pour around us, still flopping, silver sides glinting like steel. I struggle to stay upright, but as more boats disgorge, fish rise to my waist. I can no longer move my feet. We're paid by the piece. I reach down fast, pick up a fish, slap it on the board, stick my knife into the anus and slit up to the head. Guts still fresh, slip through the slats, mingle with still foundering fish. I split the flesh down to bone, snap off the head, and rip out the spine to drop in my bucket under the slats. Heads will be counted for pay before going to the fishmeal house to fertilize fields or feed Aberdeen Angus cattle. Toss the fillet on the now screaming conveyor. Ignore the mounting stink of fish seeping into my pores. Stop only when a boat unloads. Pick up another fish. Watch for danger. I saw a conger eel take the end off Morag's finger. Bloods blending, screams rivaling the conveyor. Out 3 days, she came back with finger bandaged, the whole covered in a plastic bag. She couldn't afford more days off. A dogfish, little shark, scraped me with his spine. I watched blood ooze from my arm. The foreman didn't care. Stop work. Don't work fast enough. He'll nick the underside of your arm with a fish bloody knife. Mine swelled like a balloon. Forge a rhythm until the horn blows for tea. Short of money? Work through break until shift end, 3 hours. As I got through the night's catch, I pray for no fight as each of us grabs for the last fish. Everyone has a knife. Small, I can crawl under the conveyor, but I lose money if I do. I watch Drew. He's soft for me like a dad. If he fights, I slither under the belt until his bellows stop. Look out for the foreman. If Drew winks, I keep my rhythm while he flails his knife wide and split my extra pennies with him later. 7:30, shift ends. Arms, lead weights. I can barely clean my knife to go home, wash, pretend I don't reek, and get ready for school. The second one is also about fishing. Night of thick clouds. Low clouds hang over the black water of Loch Fyne. Salt water slaps the pebble beach, slick with wet and seaweed slime. Nights so dark we load the rowboat by feel alone. Line, gaff, net, bait dug from sand that afternoon. We push the boat into the sea, climb aboard in stealth, the boys each pulling an oar. Our only light, the water itself, when we lean over the side to trail cold hands in the colder loch, luminescence in the wake of spread fingers. Silent, poaching past our quota, compelled by our need for fish to salt for winter. Old Mac, missing a finger from a long ago night of dynamiting the river mouth, still threads lines with ease, for tonight we fish the old way. Trail nets while the boys row, hoping to catch saith and lithe mid-depth, and later at anchor lower weighted lines for haddock and cod, deep below the surface, gaffing fish as we pull line, their bodies shimmering like our fingers spread in the sea. We drop the fish on floorboards, pull the gaff's barb from their gills to hook another, while they flap their last around our icy feet. Mixed water and fish blood rise, forcing us to bail. Clouds shift and open the sky. Moon pennies dance on the tops of the moving waves as we reach shore and drag the boat above tide line. We crouch low, gut fish at the end of the stone pier, wash entrails into the sea as fast as we can. We haul our catch to the shed as a sliver of light warns of dawn. We barrel fish with brine, take a few into the house to eat with floury potatoes, and go to bed with the rising sun. The last 3 that I've written appear very different to each other, but they are modern and about modern times, and they're all about, I hope, the same subject. So here they are. Visiting the Roman Colosseum. An ellipsis of stone, concrete, and tough. The guide sweeps his arm across the arena's expanse, protesting when the boys run, but they're captains, commanding ships in epic conquests in a flooded arena with steam cannons and fiery cannonballs made of clay and filled with Greek fire invented in the 7th century. The guide doesn't explain it's the precursor of napalm. Descending to chambers and passageways, accompanied by facts and figures about Christians, slaves, and politicians, the boys respond to, lions were caged here. They stab the air, roar while killing the kings of the jungle. 9,000 animals were killed in the inaugural games. The boys' eyes widen. Where were the cages? How did they fit underground? You're walking in the steps of the gladiators. The boys take giant steps, flex their skinny biceps. Back above ground, sun slants through Diocletian window spaces. The boys are emperors in charge of men and beasts, practicing thumbs up and thumbs down, not connecting this place with today's arenas of sports and concerts, places where death comes in other ways. Brain damage years later, unnamed arena builders dying from heat stroke, people trampled in surging crowds. Thinning the carrots. The tiny seeds have taken root, and I must thin them, a job I hate. If I don't, none will grow large enough to eat in their war for nutrients. I push my fingers into the soil and pull out a clump, roots entangled, leaves formed enough to photosynthesize. I spread the seedlings, seeking those that promise the biggest carrot, the longest roots, the greenest leaves. I poke my finger in the ground, reinsert the chosen ones, toss the rest in the compost. All serve me in the end, but I decide which live and which die. Guilt mine only because I am higher in the food chain with opposable thumbs that allow me to plant or pluck, or cut a grown carrot with a knife to drop in my soup and soften among turnips and onion, kohlrabi and Brussels sprouts in a broth I boiled from the bones of an animal someone else killed. But I am complicit, for no one would kill that animal if I weren't prepared to pay. The last poem is called The Art of War, and it's after let's see, I'm hoping that it will share an image. Nope, it's not going to let me show it, so I will just read the poem. It's based after a plaque called Warrior in Attendance, Edo artist from Nigeria, 15th or 16th century. No one questions who is the warrior and who are the attendants. Even stripping the warrior of his fat sword, we know. He's the one in the center, the one who matters. The attendants carry his shields, don't need his full helmet half covering his face, his large eyes in full view staring you down. Among these centuries-old warriors, the ones who matter are the little ones. The warrior's focus is on us, but his children are present to learn the art of war. One day they too pass their art to their children, as they have indeed done. I watched today's war unfold on TV, our modern plaque, people crammed on a train station fighting to escape. A woman has brought her son's Legos to give the boys a sense of normalcy in this chaos. The older boy, 8 or 9, clicks together the bricks. His younger brother passes up from the bucket on the platform floor. As fast as the younger one feeds his brother the Legos, the older one snaps them into place, red, blue, yellow, green. The train is coming and the mother appears on the TV screen. She pulls the 5-year-old into her arms, urging her older boy to come now. The boy grabs the bucket from the floor and holds up his latest creation, a Lego Kalashnikov. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. I love the narrative quality of your work,
Thank you.
especially like the carrot poem. Next up, we have Tom Odendahl. Tom began to write poetry after he retired from Minneapolis Public Schools, where he taught geography, history, and economics for nearly 40 years. He gets ideas from many sources, often from prompts or poems provided by other writers, and fleshes them out on long walks or while staring at the walls. Many poems try to describe long journeys started through small windows. I think that's a great sentence, Tom. He has been part of several public readings in various settings over the past 6 years. Take it away, Tom.
Thanks, Ron. I'd like to acknowledge before I start the support and nurturing I got from the different writing groups that I've been in, and from the poets I consider my mentors, Diane Jarvinpaugh, Thomas Smith, and Margaret Hesse, and from the classes from St. Paul's Eastside Arts Council. And the first poem is the oldest. It's called Dharma Bread. My mother's parents baked. Oh, that house. Walk in, lifted from the floor in aromas, swept to a table piled with braided loaves, egg-washed rolls, kolaches, leafy crescents, mountains of poppy seed bread, a blur of butter, clattering china, dentures, inscrutable bohemian banter as they sipped coffee from saucers. My grandfather's favorite snack was honey bread. Mine too. I loved him and his nonsense stories. In the 1920s, he ran a bakery and a cafe on Main Street. My grandmother made him sell it. He lost money giving away free coffee and sandwiches to IWW tramps and itinerant workers. Sometimes when I visited their house for a snack of honey bread, a man in threadbare clothes, carrying a battered suitcase, called at the back door looking for work. My grandmother pointed to the garage. Take that old wringer washer and put it under the pine. She scrambled eggs and spread mayonnaise on 2 thick yeasty slices, slid the eggs into the bread, wrapped it in wax paper, handed it to the man with a couple of coins. On another day, another man knocked, asking the same questions. Move that wringer washer under the pine into the garage, she said. She made a sandwich, squeezing glistening eggs between bread. Grandpa liked to butter his bread before he spooned honey on it. Grandma did not. She smoothed honey on evenly, let it soak in. This poem, the next poem, is probably inspired by conversations overheard in classrooms or on buses or in a restaurant that were none of my business, but were just so loud it screamed out for me to butt in. It's called The Weight. Your soul is not 21 grams of vapor crouched and waiting to slide between your teeth at your last breath. It rides your shoulders like an appetite, unscrews the top of your skull. One triple jointed finger probes that kettle, stirs gray ramen. It is mutable, mercurial, keeps an untidy house, barbecue sauce dried on countertops, soiled underwear left on the floor. Like all permanent objects of the visible world, cars, furniture, the Himalayan plateau, it is evanescent and weighs as much as a muon, fits in the same box with all your prayers, regrets, virtue, honor, shame. And this poem, the next poem is I can trace back to a quote from a fake shaman whose work appears in a meditation book I read. I call it Mirror. Inside, he is a man working in a shed. On the floor, bright chrome sockets, a clutter of screwdrivers. Draped in cool autumn air and pine smell of sawdust, he feels safe. Inside, he is an old man. He holds a handful of crawling demons, Dobson fly larvae he scooped from the muck at the bottom of a pond. He laughs, puts them in an empty baby food jar. Inside, he is a woman. She burns like a wood stove on a January night. Before dawn, she stands alone under the maple tree in her garden, sings psalms, folk songs, canticles to brittle stars. Inside, he is a young boy. He sleeps under his favorite blanket with his baseball glove and a plastic horse. In summer, he wishes it was winter so he could careen down Cooper's Hill in a sled. In winter, he wishes it was fall so he could blast the tops of cattails in the reed bed by the creek. Inside, he is an old woman. The clock on the wall thumbs through the seconds. Tonight, she says, the dishes can sit. She stirs a cup of instant coffee, draws pictures of the tender parts of flowers in her journal. Windows open to sharp air, the trill of spring warblers. Inside, he is a young girl. She learned to whistle and taunts the hawks who nest in the Norway pine behind her house. She has invented a world where she chooses seasons with a spin of a wheel. Each day spills out like a pomegranate on a pale blue plate. The next poem I couldn't start, so I just gave it up. This poem is a ghost runner. Like the one I left on third base when we played baseball at Paddock's Field, not a ballpark, just an empty lot behind Mr. Paddock's place, where Ricky Hofstadler, who couldn't move fast if you threw him off the top of the Empire State Building, by some miracle was safe after he hit after he hit a number. The ball was dropped, which put 3 runners on, Ricky at first, my brother on second, me at third, and I was up to bat because there were only 3 players on each team. That's why I said a ghost runner, the way I used to leave ghost runner checks back when I was drinking, mostly for liquor, but sometimes for gas or groceries, money being slow to come in but fast to go out. Only Ricky Hofstadler would have to cross home plate 20 times to cover all the ghost runners I left hanging. So this poem is on third until the one I meant to write is ready to bat, where I'll probably hit it into the lilacs behind Mr. Paddock's garage. The theme of the prompt for this poem was solitude, but all the good lines were in the poems that came in the packet of poems that came with the prompt, with the last comment being, or else just write about pencils. In this house, I write at night, alone. Soft pencil, yellow pad, by quavering lamp. In this house is wilderness. Every creature here is beautiful. Every creature here a fiend. Rivers cut deep channels, carve out ancient bones. Beasts extinct before the comet smothered all the giants. Every door coastline. Here I bring kites, postage stamps, toys, foreign coins. Bears and mice curl up in closets, wine-colored carpets, walls of prairie blue, above us fields of snow. In this room, storms prevail. Slate-streaked walls, heavy ceiling, broken parts, letter folded crisply twice. Cecropia moth, wings tattered. In here, fingers nimble bighorn sheep bound across book-spine ridges. One smells of damp stone walls, another filled with speckled birds. Perfume ink, new edition, cool, slick pages, puts her cheek upon my shoulder. I play music. I draw pictures. I shade shadows in gaps of time. In this house, what seems strange becomes beloved. And the last poem started just like Ghost Runner. When a horse walks in, I just followed it. Somewhere, a stranger rides into this poem, ties his strawberry roan to a meter outside the library, self-consciously pats his hip where he pretends he used to carry a service piece back in the day, scatters travel brochures like rose petals or breadcrumbs to seed questions. He'll talk about how sunlight ricochets off ice on mountains, perfume of palm trees, sharp blue fish, sea air sweeps in over reef. Farmers here plow to rims of volcano craters. A temple built by renegade zealots was lost in jungle vines centuries before the Buddha napped in its shadow. You can still see his footprint preserved in the permafrost. He won't cough up a mouthful of prairie, stubble fields, broken pasture, schools, churches, exhaled essence of barnyard, wall-to-wall sisters and brothers, shirt sleeves dragged through potatoes, squabbles over cartoons and cop shows on TV, magazine canned soup recipes, old underpants wash rags, the well-done food. He wants to be from somewhere. That's it.
Thank you, Tom. Very wonderful. Love the poems, the imagery and the details, as Elaine said. Next up, we have Jennifer Kelley. Jennifer is a poet, novelist, and nonfiction writer from Thousand Oaks, California. During her teen years, she regularly wrote op-eds for the Los Angeles Times and the Ventura County Star. Her poetry and short stories have been published in journals like Spillway, Escu, and Solanova's Psalms of Cinder and Silt, along with the Island Fox and BC Voices. Jennifer's poems were displayed at the California Museum of Art, Thousand Oaks, in 2019 as part of a Kevin Sloan Ekprestik exhibit, collection of rarities. She also has a fantasy trilogy of novels that are still looking for an agent and a publishing house. So if there's any agents or publishing houses listening in, contact Jennifer. Let's hear her poetry.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Kelley, and I wanted to start by thanking Ron and Minneapolis Television Network for hosting this. It's really an honor to be among the other poets here. So thank you very much. First poem is called New Year's Day, 1992. It's New Year's Day, up before sunrise. 4 of us in the car, me, Chrissy, and our 2 oldest cousins, Pat and Todd. It feels so grown up to be awake and driving to the sea without mom or dad in the car. I'm 10, must have been, long before the divorce, but after the darkness had descended. The radio is on, playing oldies. All of a sudden, Pat shouts, "Hell yes!" and turns the radio up even louder than mom would let it be, with Mother's Little Helper or Paint It Black blaring. I smile at the strains of beautiful sound as they fill my ears. Here comes the sun, little darling. Here comes the sun, and I say, it's all right. It feels all right. With the sun rising over the horizon behind us and shedding light before us. I want to hold on to this moment, this grown-up bliss, this kiss of independence. Beside me, my sister nods to the music, and we feel like family. I can't help wondering if this is the year that I'll be happy. This second poem is dedicated to Paul Linhart, who runs Art City in Ventura, which is amazing. And if you want to be inspired, check it out. Art City, Ventura, California. Some distant meteor of creation. It's not a choice, it's an opportunity. Paul Linhart. The act of creation, he says, is not a choice, but an opportunity. Paul says this half crumpled on the floor where he explores his passion. There are all these possibilities, and some of us can see them, he says. It's our duty to expose them, to allow people to look and see and know. And so it is in my corner of the work. It purrs to me of possibility, if I chase that rabbit, if I step through that passageway. Then the work becomes so obvious, basic transcription, it's so plain. Then the work crawls toward me like Paul Lindhart, gesturing and contorting to express its meaning. When I am adrift, it's because I am blinded, like a flip being switched, like stepping into the monkey house, because I have forgotten that my eyes have two pairs of lids. And so it is when I say I love you, not mechanical or rote, but neither a choice that I am making. You exist inside me like time and breath. You are not a choice, but an opportunity that I am always elated to catch with my butterfly net. And so it is when I say I love you, that I am a rocket through space and you are that distant meteor somewhere outside Pluto that Paul brought to life in rocks so pretty, it's hard to call it rock. I can see you and I can wish on you, despite the fact that you are not a star. Your gravity pulls me closer and closer to the possibility that maybe you do shine of your own volition. And if not, maybe we'll still end up melded together, welded by something more basic than heat or cold, more basic than gravity, but just the God that holds the world together. For you and I have always been made of it, stuck to one another from perhaps the first breath. Because you and I have always been made of it. I do not run from it, but fuse into your side, pulling you closer than a sister, than a mother, than a partner, collapsing into you as you fall into me, until our parts are blended and we wonder at the power of love. Thank you. I live with bipolar disorder. And this next poem is about mania, which is the highest end of bipolar, so most energetic. Purple kangaroos. I dream of purple kangaroos. They must be royalty. They must be like kites that fly with every step above the cello of the Taj Mahal or the Wailing Wall. They must be like a line of children holding hands and running, knowing that any moment their magical abilities will set in. And I will fly and not look back. And I will touch the clouds and the air beyond the clouds that they say cannot be breathed. Will massage my lungs and make light my head. And I will not look down. I will not fall like the others. I will not doubt that a purple kangaroo has wings, no matter what the science books say. They've never heard of me. I am not like the thousands of fallens. My body will not decorate the ground. I will not be the latest carcass as a young kangaroo takes flight for the first time and believes that he has wings. I am not like them. I am not deceived. I am not weak. I am not naked and crying like babies left in dumpsters by girls. I am not. I can fly. I can lift above it and see it all going on. But I am better. I am better. I am a purple kangaroo, damn it. I am a god. I am a beast in flight. Aren't you afraid? You don't see my cape soaring behind me? I guess not, because I'm too high for flight, or too high for sight. I am a blind and forgetful god, and I love it. I do not look back. I do not look down. They have fallen that way. and I will not fall. And then, thank you. I'd like to close with a poem about my granddad. It's from an exercise I do sometimes, where I take the first poem, the first line of somebody else's poem, and then the last line of somebody else's poem, and I try and link the two thoughts. So I start with the first line or some version of it, and end with the last line or some version of it. So I have a little wiggle room. Anyway, this is about my granddad, and it uses the lines by Fatima Asghar. Each morning I stitch a scowl over my smile. And from Emily Dickinson, you may forget the warmth he gave. I will forget his light. Okay, it's called Light. Each morning I stitch a scowl over my smile. I dress myself in ashes and don't mascara my lashes, because I know the time for tears has come. I remember his hands as they whittled or scooped out the guts of a grapefruit. I remember while he looked down, I remember their calluses resting gently on my cheek when he looked down at me with a smile. Because memories are all that are left to me these days. Remembrances of his twinkle, his laugh, his skilled woodcraft. I remember him. Because memories are all that are left to me. I don't cling to the hem of his checked cotton shirts. I don't laugh at his joke or blush at his teasing. Those were the gifts of childhood. But when I saw his coffin, they were lost to me. I'd never felt so grown up as looking down into his strange, vacant face, trying not to reach out or pry to what was no longer there. His light had gone out and left behind dull memory, and left behind hearts begging and open hands. You may remember the warmth he gave, but I will remember his light. Thank you very much. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you, Jennifer. Very powerful stuff. Love that exercise on that last poem. Worked very well. Our final poet of the night is Christine Madline Ellsworth. Christine is a Minnesota native hailing from Minneapolis. She's lived in many states, including Wyoming, Colorado, Idaho, Illinois, and Wisconsin, and currently resides in eastern North Dakota. She holds a BA of English Literature from Minnesota State University and an MA from Marquette University. As a member of the National Association for Poetry Therapy and the International Federation of Biblical Poetry Therapy, Christine is working towards certification as a certified poetry therapy facilitator. Poetry therapy has been recognized as beneficial to people who seek healing and growth. Christine is the author of one book of poetry titled Girl Again, published in 2021 by Pottersville Press, and has received the first award of merit in the League of Minnesota Poets for entry in the annual 2021 contest. Take it away, Christine.
Thank you, Ron. I want to thank you for offering me this opportunity to share my poetry with people and Minnesota television. And Valerie, who's working behind the scenes, shout out to you. I'm going to read my first poem from my book, Girl Again, and it's titled Madline. I was in a little wooden boat with a friend on Pearl Lake in northern Minnesota. It was Mother's Day or Memorial Day, I can't remember. We fished lazily for northern, snagging a string of juveniles that afternoon, releasing them back over the side. Taking a breather, I cast a hand in the water, looking up to stare down the sky. Soon the sky started talking, widening into words, speaking the name Madline. The name of the grandmother on my mother's side, the French one, is what the sky said. It said this by billowing up huge scallopy clouds, tossing them onto the barest of bluenesses and whistling them all in a brisk northerly wave. The boat rocked. Madline died when I was only 6, I said to my fisher friend, as if translating. So I don't remember much about her. At my age, I looked up to her. She was rounded, soft, white-haired. The day she died, I didn't understand death as I do now. Being told that I would never see her again, I understood that she had become invisible, a superpower. Though never to share fresh cookies with us from the old orange coffee can, or offer sun-ripened tomatoes plucked new from the vine, still warm in the deep well of her clean white apron, or to sit on the sagging planks, porch gazing at sunset with her watery French blue eyes, shelling green peas. I know nothing else of her except what my mother once said years later. She weeded the garden the day she died. She had 11 children. 2 died of diphtheria. She whistled comforting airs at times when most wives would break down. This is all I remember of her. My fisher friend nods, wisely quiet. He sees the same lake and sky, but he doesn't hear the same woman as I do, of course not, for I myself only hear her on days when the mirror is round with white clouds, just as it was the day she died. I remember my grandmother, not in the small things a child knew of her, but in the big lensing of shine she has become, above and below, between lake and sky. We drifted on Pearl Lake, listening. This next one is a new one, written within the last 6 months or so. It's called Red Osier Dogwood. Those slender red osier dogwood shoots I clipped late that one winter, I brought them to you, barely 8 sticks wrapped in newspaper. Start them here, I said, in a tall, clear glass vase filled with fresh water nearest a warm southern window, and wait a few weeks. There on our kitchen counter, they set forth a sprout of seed pearls strung on barely green buds. Then, oh yes, soon enough, an audacity of leaves, such natural assertions in fresh emerald strands climbed up onto our flat February gray. Quite the surprise, you said. Your eyebrows lifted, remember? It was those days, drained of color, devoid of light, when we orbited slivered penumbras of hope that hollowed and splintered our riven souls. It was then that the red osier dogwood's covenant with spring saved us, just barely, for yet one more season of sky. Thanks. Okay, I'm going to read another new one. Kaleidoscope. Most of my poems come from prompts as well, from other groups that I write with, you know, and then often they just sit around in a notebook for a few months, and then I pick them up later and go, oh, this is what I'm going to do. So this is where this one came from too, as a prompt. Kaleidoscope. I opened a lucky red door into the house of my life. I lie supine for weeks, then straddle hip balanced or drag floor bound until days gathered the traction of months, and the years took me steps upward, as if time was a prefab spiral staircase that sometimes collapsed at an unholy pitch, unannounced like a murderous funhouse. Form a line and exit the circus, then resurrect onto a calm path forward to an afternoon within green forests, thence, without the grace of a second of recovery, go down again through the murk of dark, arid Idaho valleys, guided by constellations often placed in my sky by others, and sometimes distorted like a house of mirrors, my feet stuck on the pretty shards, floor-bound on bloody grief. Not at the county fair. A new day eventually dawned, and they knew it would, those makers of the red door. And came that long-form morning when I again gripped the smooth oak handrail on the true staircase and ascended that last flight. Strong, now sure-footed, I stand on a landing, healing, catch my breath. I grip this fortunate gift, my kaleidoscope, this optical instrument I materialized and assembled myself through missteps, outdated maps, childhood wishes, and my own misdirection, and turn it this way and that. Sometimes I can even make out a pattern and find my way to a familiar threshold, to a glittering, luminous joy, an opened moment of cerise beauty. Thanks. This is Minnesota Lake, and this came from some sort of a challenge. I can't even remember where the challenge came from, but it was the idea of what would a lake think if it could think? What would a lake say? And of course, here in Minnesota, there's a lot of them. This is called Minnesota Lake. The lake thinks, we think, in terms of slope or clarity, or perhaps fluctuation, but really she speaks a certain dialect of region or simple place names. She is Sweet Lake, Johnny Cake Lake, Biddy Makaska, Bachelor, Calhoun, Superior, the many Lake 35s, 312s, Lake Full of Fish, or the Sugar Lakes of Glen, Reamer, Cass Lake, and Maple Lake counties, Sun High Lake, Swartout Lake, Pretty Topaz Lake, or that big girl Waganga of Kandiyohi County. Post your ice fishing report here. All of them, the thousands of them, all the diamonds and pearls and sapphires and opals, all brilliant heiresses of their one glacial mother. Yet here in these Minnesota biomes, so divergent, diverse, nitrogen, phosphorus, they alike simmer in an algae bloom, swimming in the fecund fecal matter of pike and burbeau, muskellunge, freshwater shrimp, painted turtles, snakes, lilies, water pennies, springtails, and the navies of caddisflies. Ever onward the waves of erosion, born of an ancient wintry wait until all settles and settles and settles soft into winter and shifts over to a harder place of settled silence, so heavy at the slow, still center, at her thermocline, born of steady, sure drop in heat, sure shift downward to an interior pool of deep mystic consciousness rising slow, slower, slow, when sure slow becomes slow, shy sunlight peeking late into March, when she awakens again, turns. Up out of ice shearing glaciers, the groaning decibels, still sometimes resonant when the lake heaves midwinter. Now her language is strong, is consonant as the strike of trees falling onto bare black earth, harrowing as the tornadic shriek of barometric involutions some tens of thousands of feet in the air. Her shifting weight like a woman turning a heavy hip over onto her back after a long season belly prone, now utterly joyful, eyes upward, open, gulping oxygen. The lake sweetly calls down the sky, converges with air, plays songs with new winds. Flutes and fingers furry white rivulets and shoulders them back relentlessly, teasing his shoreline with certain dissolution, decadence. Her depths give rise to strings of plumes bubbling up stink in the spring, the sure scent of ripe life turning over yet again. She thinks only now. That's what I got to share with you tonight. Thanks, everybody. It's good to be here with you.
Thank you, Christine. I'm glad you read the lake poem. Before I read a final poem, I want to thank all the poets who read tonight, everyone out there who's watching this on Facebook or who will watch it on Facebook or YouTube later. Definitely Valerie Lockhart and Minneapolis Television Network. This is a poem by Stephen Crane. Truth, said a traveler, is a rock, a mighty fortress. Often have I been to it, even to its highest tower, from whence the world looks black. Truth, said a traveler, is a breath, a wind, a shadow, a phantom. Long have I pursued it, but never have I touched the hem of its garment. And I believe the second traveler, for truth was to me a breath, a wind, a shadow, a phantom, and never had I touched the hem of its garment. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a wonderful evening.
Thanks,
Give it
Ron.
back to the-
Thank you